Kinakausap ko si Governor Defensor, sabi ko, kala ko meron pang bago magsalita bago ako. Hanggang pinaalala ni Commissioner Chair Pawid na ikaw na nga pala yun, nakalimutan ko, binindigan niyo pala ako ng bagong pangalan. Kasi sa kanila, sa Cordillera, ako si Tukwifi. Sa Mountain Province, ang ibig sabihin ng Tukwifi, star. Last week naman, sa Davao, sa Region 11, at si Director Sonia pala, former Regional Director ng Tourism, is Mandaya. Ang 5 IP groups naman ng Region 11, binansagan akong by Matumpis, the one who cares. At dito naman, salamat po sa inyo, madamogid nga salamat, pinangalanan nyo akong pinakamahirap na memorya na pangalan. Titingin ako sa Godigo. Okay, ano yan? Kuyong Adlaw. Ito, sandali. Hanahanap ko sa marami kong kodigo. Kuyong Adlaw Dulpaan. Marami. Ang ibig sabihin yan, shining din ba? Parang star? Araw naman. So, star between na, araw pa. Universe na yon. Brilliant star. Mayad nga aga, kaninyo nga tanan. Madamo gid nga salamat kay Governor Defensor sa kanyang pag-host dito sa provincial capital, sa inyong napakagandang mga pangangasalita. Ako ay nalipay ako na makabalik diri sa Iloilo City. Madamo gid nga salamat kay Mayor Jed Mabilog sa kanyang pahayag na gagawa sila sa City Council ng isang araw ng mga IP dahil ang mga ati, panay Bukidnon, ay hindi lamang sa city, pati rin sa province. At kanina, habang nagpa-perform ang ating mga indigenous people as directed by one of the foremost anthropologists of our times, Dr. Magos, ay pinahayag ni Governor at ni Mayor na pag-uusapan yung pag-draft ng local ordinance for a declaration of the resolution that would give tribute to our indigenous peoples of Western Visayas, not only the city and the province, but let the city and the province be the center of indigenous peoples in Western Visayas. Thank you very much for very proactive, creative, and supportive local government leaders. Salamat din kay Chadeng, Congresswoman Chadeng, a very dynamic young lawyer in Congress. I'm so happy, surprised that she's here today. Her district also hosts our indigenous peoples, and some of the Sangguniang Panglunsod and IP elected leaders are here today. Thank you, Chadeng. And one day I will also visit Nesca and have a similar assembly such as this. And Chair Pawid, if you see the chairman of NCIP all smiling now because we just passed our budget yesterday. Thank you for all our mayors for being here today. Dahil kayo po ay nandito, iisa-isain ko yung babatiin. Mayor Milyar Villanueva, salamat po, nandito kayo. Mayor Anani Biron, ang kapatid na nakababata ni Congressman Biron. Thank you, Mayor Biron. Former Mayor Ramon Yee was here earlier. And Mayor Ike Rojas, damogid salamat. Former Governor Sally Perez, my aunt, former Governor of Antiques, also here. Mayor Alex Centena, ang kalinog yata, ang marami ang ating mga Indigenous Peoples Group. Thank you. Mayor Matt Palabrica is also here. Mayor Vic Saclauso of San Miguel is also here. And George Largado of Kabangkalan and Guillermo Colas ng Libacao, Aklan. Mga elected IP leaders are also here. I hope I did not miss anyone here today. I will not read my speech because I want to tell you in both English, Filipino, at saka Ilonggo, halo-halo na lang. What is this IP assembly all about? I'm so happy and glad with the candor of some of our elected leaders because not everybody can claim knowledge and expertise of what is indigenous people, what are indigenous peoples, what are their rights. Mula po, nung ako'y mamahayag pa, 30 years ago, ako po'y gumagawa na ng mga dokumentaryo tungkol sa mga aitas ng Sambales, sa mga mangyan ng Mindoro, sa mga iba't ibang katutubo sa Aklan, sa iba't ibang lugar, hanggang sa kasulok-sulukan sa Lanao Sur, sa Maguindanao, sa Tawi-Tawi, inaakit ko mga bundok, at tutulog ako doon. Hindi lang kasama ng MILF, MNLF at saka NPA, kundi na rin kasama ng mga katutubo. At dinodocument ko po ang inyong mga ritual, ang inyong mga kultura, heritage, ang mga chants ni Mang Federico, at ibang-ibang bagay. And I never thought in my life that I would become a senator in 1998, then eventually become chairman of the cultural communities. Again, I told this to Chair Pawid. Sometimes during caucuses, and in fact in this new Congress, all the committees were distributed. I was just quiet. Lahat ng major committee nag-apportion na. Natira ang cultural communities. Nobody seemed to want it because they had other so-called major committees. And this is considered in the Senate, unfortunately, as a minor committee. And when everybody had all committees, and I did not have a committee except climate change, they said, o sino may gusto ng cultural committees? I was just quiet. Kasi, mas ayaw mo, mas ibibigay sa'yo. O kay Loren na lang. O yun, di kay Loren na lang. And I thought it's really a blessing because it's been my advocacy for 3 decades now. And legends have it, from our family of Tita Sally, we come from Antique. My grandmother used to tell me, my mother used to tell me, that we came from Ati and a Spanish, beautiful Spanish lady. Nagpakasal daw ang Ati at ang Kastila, ang produkto, ang mga ninuno ni Sally Perez at ni Loren Legarda. Kayo na po ang maghusga kung sino ang kamukhang Kastila at sino ang mukhang Ati o pinaghatian kaming Kastila at Ati. Totoo yun, totoo. Pagtitirin yung aming family tree. Pero sabi ng mga nila, myths and legends, baka totoo, di ba? Kaya matagal ko na yung advokasya dahil nakikita ko, we are who we are because of our indigenous people. Imagine 110 ethno-linguistic groups all over the country. Almost each province has their own IP group. Ang inyong po mga chant, ang ating Gamaba Awardee, ang inyong mga beadwork, ang inyong mga textiles and traditional attire, ang inyong traditional food, your rituals, your own language, your beadwork, your basketry, your arts and crafts, your languages, your indigenous knowledges and practices, your indigenous environmental practices as stewards of nature. All of these must be preserved. And I thought when I assumed the chairmanship of the cultural communities in the Senate that I would make a so-called traditionally minor committee into the most major committee. Just like maybe 10 years ago, nobody cared much, at least in the Senate, about climate change, and I kept on talking about climate change adaptation in my first term. Just like in 2007 when I spoke about disaster risk reduction and the vulnerability of communities to disaster reduction, nobody seemed to understand or empathize. But now, everybody's mouthing climate change, disaster reduction, vulnerabilities. Believe me, next year, everybody will be talking about indigenous peoples and you will be at the center stage of our national development. And why not? Why not? Of the 100 million Filipinos, 15 million at least are indigenous peoples. We are 1/6 of the Philippine population who must have equal access to education, who must have equal access to basic and good quality healthcare services, who must have equal access towards the fulfillment of the dreams and realization of the Filipino dream. Why not? The 1997 IPRA law was enacted long before I became a senator. When then Congressman Defensor probably was in Congress then and helped enact the IPRA. And fast forward 15 years later, we still have to see the full implementation of the IPRA law. This Indigenous Peoples Assemblies, the first one in Baguio City 2 weeks ago, Chair Pawid was also there, where we gathered over 500 IP leaders all over Luzon. Last week in Tagum, it was Governor Del Rosario, Del Norte, who hosted it, with more than, again, 500 IP leaders all over the country. And now, we chose Iloilo City as the host for the Visayas. We are bringing together regional directors from various agencies, NCIP, I hope the DNR is here, officials from the DA, and the various DepEd, various agencies of government, because I believe that convergence is so important. Just like in every budget hearing, when we grill the DepEd secretary for their budget, or the DA secretary for their budget, or the DNR secretary, coordination, support, and convergence of all government agencies is essential. And so we bring the NCIP at the center of this assembly, and for you to have a forum to ventilate not only grievances, but also your best best practices that have been sustainable and that are examples for other IP groups and non-IP groups to follow. I also want to bring to your attention the pending legislation or bills in the Senate. First, the Anti-Ethnic Profiling Act. Ano ba ho ito? Yung pagbabawal ng diskriminasyon sa ating mga katutubo. Yung paggamit sa media ng mga salitang hindi karapat-dapat. Yung pag-discriminate sa inyo sa employment o sa pagbibigay ng healthcare. Yung pagbabansag ng hindi magandang pagtrato o pangalan dahil sa kamangmangan o dahil sa kakulangan ng impormasyon. Because of the Anti-Ethnic Profiling Act, which hopefully we can enact within this Congress, we will have better enlightenment and awareness of the rights of IPs and more equitable and maybe a better imaging of our IPs among society. Second is the preservation and protection of your cultural properties. Just like it was mentioned by Chair Pawid, you are so rich in culture. Now that the DOT has a new secretary at SEM, and during their budget hearing they said that they will focus among eco and agritourism on cultural tourism. Strip the Philippines of the 110 IP groups, we are almost nothing. We are who we are because of the 110 ethno-linguistic groups. Dahil po sa inyo, kaya mayaman ang Pilipino. Dahil po sa ating lahat, kaya tayo ay magagaling, magaganda, mayaman sa kultura, sa sayaw, sa pagkain, sa lengguwahe, dahil sa kayamanan ng ating katutubo. And that really can converge with the DOT cultural tourism. Just yesterday, in the Commission on Filipino Overseas Committee hearing, one of their thrusts is Lakbay Aral. Part of learning our history is really the centuries-old Atis, Panay Bukidnon, Mamanwa, Amtas, etc. all over the country. And so I talked to Meli Nicolas, a chair of the CFO, and they will have a very strong program in their Lakbay Aral program for cultural tourism, focusing on the culture of our indigenous people. We sat down in Baguio with Chair Pawid and the chair of the NCCA, and that is Chairman Felipe De Leon, who will help us in documenting the cultural properties of our indigenous people. Meron isang maliit na grupo ng katutubo sa isang isla sa Samar. Ayon sa aming budget hearing last year pa, sinasabi, I cannot find the name of that group now, nawawala na daw ang kanilang pananalita, ang lingwahe. Kailangan puntahan yun dahil i-document na dapat ang kanilang pananalita. Isang 15-year-old na bata sa Tagum ay kumanta ng napakagandang chant. At sabi ko, ikaw ba'y nag-aaral? Hindi na ho, dahil full-time siya, he's engaging himself in talking to the elders to try to learn all the chants because soon the elders will be gone and that heritage and legacy will be gone. And so this is what we want to do. We are passionate about documenting all your indigenous knowledge and cultural practices because it will make us prouder of who we are as a people. We also want to make sure that the provisions of the IPRA, like your representation in legislative councils, which is not implemented everywhere because of some stumbling blocks. We do not fault the local assemblies or the local government leaders. Perhaps what we should do is to explain it and how to implement it so that IPRA, in that provision at least, can be fully implemented. Of course, we know that our indigenous people who live by the mountainside, who live by the rivers, who live by the mangrove areas, are one of the most vulnerable in the world. The Philippines is said to be the third most at risk of disaster, according to the Disaster World Report. We are one of the most vulnerable nations in the world, but we are also one of the richest in biodiversity. The Visayas Sea, of which Iloilo Province is a part of, we are at the center of biodiversity in the world. Napakayaman natin. Ngunit tayo ay at risk, tayo ay vulnerable. 20 typhoons a year, we cannot stop. But we can make ourselves less prone to these natural hazards. Ang mga bagyo, mga pagputok ng bulkan, ang pagtaas ng sea level, maaari pong hindi natin pigilin. Pero our natural hazards don't have to turn into tragedies or disaster reduction. I can speak on and talk about many more subjects, but we are here to listen to you. I simply wanted to engage you in this IP assembly, which we are doing. So we have Luzon, we've had Mindanao, now our combination is Visayas. And on October 13 and 14, we will gather all the resolutions and all the outputs of the two-day assemblies for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and have the IP Cultural Summit in Manila, in the National Museum. We will have an interactive exhibit, meron tayong forum, at ipapagsama-sama natin ang lahat ng mga suhestyon ng ating mga Indigenous Peoples Group in consultation with the NCIP and the other agencies of government, and I will deliver a privileged speech in the Senate and present it in both houses of Congress, and perhaps in the next LEDAC also present it and give it to the executive, to the departments concerned, so that your voices will be heard, have been heard, not only in the provincial capitals where the assemblies were held, but also in the national government where the laws are being implemented. So on this occasion, I thank you very much. Pasensya na po, English na po ang aking salita. Sabi ko magpipilipino at mag-Ilonggo, kailangan mag-brush up ako dyan. Madamo, gid salamat. I am forever grateful to the kindness and generosity of Governor Defensor and Mayor Mabilog for their kind words and for their support and for joining us in this advocacy. Chadeng, thank you as well. Thank you very much. Isang lunti ang umaga po sa ating lahat.